Wait, sorry about the parking. Just one of those things, we'll go downtown. There's a lot of people here that work downtown, so we understand, you gotta be careful. Right, so I want to welcome everybody to the flyer. My name is Jim Mason, and I am the program director of the AFRL Small Business Hub. This facility is a Wright Brothers Institute facility. We have 3 other facilities. This one is our downtown location, and then we have one on Springfield Street. And then we also have it's called, we call our Monster Drive, it's on Channing Road. And we're in partnership with EDRI on that, facility. And so, who is this like the first ever collider? 1, 2. Cool, I'm glad. Welcome. And so next week I have another collider coming up. It's going to be a really good collider. It's about the new AFRL regional networks that are already functional. So I'm just going to be telling you, we'll have the Midwest Regional Hub Network. Excuse me, I'm not supposed to say hub anymore. It's regional network. They dropped the hub. So it's the Midwest Regional Network representative, and that the Midwest is at Purdue University. They'll be here, and then also the Mid-Atlantic representative will be here to present what they offer to small businesses. So long story short, it's kind of like a miniature SIBR program. So, and each one had its own technology focused areas. So, so the Midwest is more information systems type thing. Mid-Atlantic is more advanced materials and stuff like that. So, and some other just quick notes I want to go over. There are no slides today, so I will not be sending out any slides, but I will be sending the link if you want to review the video again to watch the presentations today. We're going to have a panel. So Rachel Mackey will be she'll be announcing. She'll be you're not going to be the moderator.
Brian,
yeah, Brian's going to be the moderator. Yeah, so that you're going to be introducing them. Yeah, gotcha. Luke, first thing we're going to do is Rachel's going to do her announcements. So that's right. Yeah, you don't need to make it. We've done all the time. That's okay. So other than that, does anybody have any questions about the facility or anything? Or okay, restrooms are on the first room there by the front door. Page to go snack bar. Take a break if you need one. And that's about it. And also we will have a networking event after the flyer's over at the Dayton Beer Company. It's optional, so you can come if you'd like. Hopefully it'll keep them rain. So.
hello, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see some faces, some familiar, some new. That's always good. Sticks and a lot of folks online. I'm Rachel Mackey. I am the director of programs for Women in Defense, and we are so excited to be doing this event with Jim, the WBI, with small business offices and base, and we are really, really excited for today's conversation around workforce development. I think it's going to be super excited to have Ms. Water with us. We've been very excited about this. We want to just very simply thank our sponsors for the year. They've been running through. And then just to highlight an upcoming event for Women in Defense next month would be Thursday, April 11th, and it's going to be from 11:30 to 1. Our speaker is going to be Evelyn Betcher, and we are going to be talking about MLAI, which is another very relevant conversation to be having in today's space. So kind of responsible MLAI adoption everything you need to know about that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to.
I'll go ahead and add a few words real quick. Thank you. My name is Luke Schultz, Director of Workforce Lifecycle Management Center, Small Business Programs. Jeff Milan would like to be here, the AFMC Small Business Program Director. He's actually traveling right now, but it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Kathy Water. She's a member of the Senior Executive Service. She's Director for Personnel and Manpower and Services Directorate at Air Force Material Command, located Wright Patterson Air Force Base. And I know before that, ma'am, you're Executive Director at Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. She was key on really pushing small business. I know we had record spend during that time, and just honored to introduce you, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm gonna stay down here if that's okay. I'm for some reason getting on the stage. So you can take that bio down and everything. But it's all good, and I'm proud of that bio too. So I'll talk about that. The people, you know, anyway, sometimes I did go a little darker since that picture. So anyway, great to be here today. Thank you from
Welcome.
everything you do at AFRL, and a special thanks to Luke, and it's good to be here with Luke today because we work together at LCMC and in the small business area. And as Luke said, it wasn't me during the time there, but we really put a focus on small business at the Lifecycle Management Center. Had a lot of the enterprise contracts that many of you are involved with, and we just kept building on that. And for me, just to see firsthand the value of small business, and for an organization like LCMC at the time, 28, probably 30,000 people. And we could not have done our job without small business. So great to be back in this community. I know several of you. I talked with Cassie, I talked to Elena here, and I saw some people up there on pictures, so recognized all of them. But some great new faces out there, and it's great that you have a place like this to come together. And great to get downtown to Tech Town here. So I know today a lot of focus on, I think, the tech aspect of workforce development. I can talk about that all day long, what we're not doing and what we need to do. But I really wanted to talk about the value of workforce, whether you're like myself, a government employee, we have certainly our military complement of people. And then really the small businesses that support what we do. And I would be the first to tell you, we cannot do it without our contracting work. And so I don't hide behind that. I've seen, many times in my career where those sentiments vary over the years, quite frankly. And but we cannot get the job done with that. So thank you for all that you're doing in our community, and a lot happening. I mean, we are on the cusp of a lot of changes for the Air Force. I mean, you've read out there, we'll continue to roll out. But just a couple of points on that, and then I'll just hit some things. I'll take some questions if you want. So when I think let me start a little bit historically, and then I'm going to lead to this where we are, I think, with workforce development, what we need in the Air Force and our community. And I'm always sensitive now, particularly at the command. I represent the whole command here, but certainly Wright Pat, and I do believe we have others on out there, correct?
Yeah.
So welcome to everybody out there. I wish you could be here in person, but our technology is great, and so you are. So all of you have your career stories, and I think when you started, and many of you are much different place in your career than I am, but if you go back to the fact, when you began your career, and I always tell people, I signed up for a career. I did not sign up for a job. Luke has heard me say that many times. I signed up for a career. So day one, when I entered the Air Force, I worked as a summer hire. At that time, there was a big hiring freeze. I went to private industry. It was very interesting for women back in those times, and I think it was a great experience, but I always know that I wanted to work for the government. I love my summer hire and summer experience time. So if you've heard me talk before, I always talk about this story, but it's so important. It's so important today, and kind of where my journey has taken me. My first day as an FM trainee at the acquisition center, the lady who in-processed me, and her name is G. Todd, I can pick her out of a crowd today. She said, Kathy,
here is your training plan and your job rotation for the next 3 years. And I thought, no one has ever, for 3 years, I worked in private industry, no one ever cared about career. Nobody had ever talked with me. And here on my first day of the Air Force, somebody was saying, this is your career and here's the training you're going to take. So I'd like to think that my workforce development seeds were planted really on day one. But I didn't realize. I mean, I went into the acquisition and worked there many, many years. But I think that's, when I look back on that, the importance of what she said to me. And we all need to be doing that every day to our work. And when I go out there and I meet with people, you know, up and comers, our young professionals, our rising stars, whatever you want to call them, I can see people clamoring for, what does a career look like? What am I supposed to go do? They're not going to be able to Google it and find out. I mean, they can find out about jobs and everything, but that is a human intervention that really all of you have a part in. And I take that very seriously. So I think, you know, if you go through my career, and by the way, I only got to where I was and came to the government because I had an amazing female mentor in my life, and that was my mom. My mom was a career civilian, worked for, at that time, the Acquisition Center Aeronautical Systems Division, worked for all the generals. And there's a picture, I should have brought this picture, I should have brought one slide. There's a picture of her in the 80s with a room full of general officers and colonels. And there she is, the one woman in the picture. And she did a lot of the, wasn't a lot of computer technology back then, but she did a lot of the early IT and the briefings and stuff like that. So, I mean, she was managing these generals early on. So no wonder I thought, you know, maybe I managed generals or maybe they managed me or something like that. But, you know, seeds were planted by her. So this workforce development thing is just what I've always had passion for. And there's so many ways that we can look at this on what we need. Again, it's not just from a government standpoint, but it's our whole communities out there that need a defense workforce. And there's a lot of ways that you're going to get that workforce. So, you know, thinking about as my career went on, you know, this passion for workforce, and, you know, those of you that have been formal supervisors, remember when your first seeds were planted as a supervisor. It's like, this is hard stuff. I got all these problems. People are at my doorstep. And oh, by the way, I have my day job to do here too. I look back in one of the program offices, but again, the seeds kept getting planted and the importance of having that right workforce. So as you continue to grow in this, I grew in my career, the importance of workforce just every step along the way. We cannot get this job done without workforce. And I think so many times we're so focused on getting the mission done, we forget about if you don't have that workforce to get the mission done, the mission is not, it will not get done without. And so, you know, fast forward now, here I am. I had, as Ruth mentioned, I was at LCMC for 7+ years and, you know, still wanting to serve. And then General Richardson called and he said, hey, you know, we've got our A1, our Manpower Personnel and Services A1 or AFMC A1 position. The truth, I'm being transparent. There's no one on the bench. That's the problem. There's no one on the bench. And you're like, no one on the bench, sir? You know, what about so-and-so out there? Well, they don't, you know, they've got some limitations, or they got some things. So he said, will you come over? And I said, you know, sir, I said, well, absolutely, you know, I'll come over. But I'll come over because it's what I love doing and I love taking care of people, you know, civilians. And I've gone back to taking care of some military now too, which is great. I did a lot of that in the Pentagon and I love taking care of the military. And oh, by the way, we have a lot of contractors, support, small business across. So I said, absolutely, I will come. And I am not a career personnelist by trade. There are some specific rule sets and being a 201, I can't do things that others can do. But I said, hey, I have a great team behind me. I can do it. So not quite there a year, but I am really enjoying it. Maybe more so than I thought. And I miss the acquisition. I grew up as an acquisition girl and I miss that a lot. But I'm really liking the headquarters opportunities. And lo and behold, here I arrive, and all of a sudden the SecAF says, we're gonna do some changes in the Air Force, And so to be on the, hey, welcome, to be on the cusp of that, kind of where I'm at, and there will be some changes, good change. I think. It was time, I was talking with Kathy earlier, probably time for the Air Force to make a shift here. I think the realization. And so it's been great. I've been working a lot of stuff, as you've read in the press, what's out there. Working with a lot of, they stand up and this Airman Development Plan, still there's a lot to be rolled out what that'll be, but there I was, and talking about people and talking about the workforce and the workforce we need. So, as I said, I'm loving it. There's a lot to learn still. And but I could have asked, I'm so happy to join what you're calling and say, come on in. So a few things I'll mention, and then I'll be happy to take some questions and things that are on your mind. I know you got a panel, I don't want to stop that and sort of the breakout and things, but let me go back to LCMC, because I think there's some things I want to insert there that really have paid fruition even now where I'm at and I think about it. So back last year, late 2022, 2023, at the Lifecycle Management Center, we knew we were going to have to hire. We had, because of the pandemic, a lot of things, we had a couple of years where we had some civ pay limitations. But all of a sudden, working with General Morris at the time, that's who General Shipton now replaced General Morris at the time, General Morris and I, we knew we had to go higher. And we had not been out there. And I think the way that we hired was changing around us, but we knew we still needed an in-person interface. We recruited in a lot of different ways. So we did this whole campaign, everybody's a recruiter, we went out there. I was blown away by how the center was able to hire. We brought on like 3,000 people at Lifecycle Management Center last year. That's all of our locations. We have not hired like that in years. And people were lined up outside our door. There was a funny picture down at Robins Air Force Base. We had an event. And again, at first I think we thought maybe, we'll get the normal people that show up. Amazing to me, the people that are showing up. A lot of people that are showing up, a few of them small businesses. It was I think the workforce is changing out there, and a lot of benefit in the government, always has been, always will be. But this picture at Robins, they showed me, and if anybody's ever been to Robins Air Force Base, anybody's ever out from Denver or online there from Robins, these folks were lined up and down the hillside around there, and I thought, this looks like Taylor Swift concert. I had to beat her out because there were more people lined up at Robins. I mean, the picture was wonderful. And so that picture got a lot of mileage. And I know this past few days, I think LCMC's had their hiring event, probably at Holiday Inn or something there. But again, I saw some early numbers. I'm not gonna quote anything because I think they're still working that. But again, there's a workforce out there that we all need, and people are interested in our jobs for a lot of reasons: stability, benefits, just a lot of good things. But I think a lot of it is serving your country, serving the mission, and that's a lot of things. And again, my own personal experience in private industry, it's great, but there's nothing like this mission too. And so I think the hiring events are still a big deal. We're hiring in so many ways. And just another quick story, and then I'll get on to just, I want to hit a couple of other key points here. I learned a lot in the acquisition world when I came back several years ago from the Pentagon, because we were hiring a different type of people. We all used to stovepipe, you'd be FM, contracting, whatever. All of a sudden, we found ourselves having to hire people that we were competing with big companies, this IT, this cyber, this software. And so if you've ever heard of our software center, our software factories, Kessel Run is one that's got a lot of attention in the past 4 or 5 years. But I learned a lot personally, helping them hire and find the workforce that they needed at Kessel Run. Because again, people working at Kessel Run were not going to apply on USA jobs. There was a different network of how you cast that net for that type of talent. And I learned that working with our software factories. And that's what the standard Air Force was telling me to do. Oh, go out there with USA jobs. And I said, hey, wait a minute. You're not going to get this high-tech talent. They're not looking at USA jobs. There's other ways to do that. And Kessel Run really taught me personally how to go after that talent. And I think overall, that's been a very successful model for the Air Force. But the point I wanted to make, a lot of talent, the talent that all of us need in that tech area, there are a lot of people who really want to serve our mission. And so we had a big hiring event up there, and these people showed up. Again, it wasn't like a USA Jobs thing. We did have it in person, and they had made connections in a lot of ways. But this talent had worked on Wall Street, Silicon Valley, but there was kind of this inner desire to support your country and support the national defense mission. And we attracted people. They weren't going to be with us forever. We hired a lot of term people in that first Kessel Run. I didn't expect them to have a whole career. They're probably going to go back out to private industry. But the 3 or 4 years that we had them, invaluable to grow our workforce and to grow this highly tech work. So I learned a lot from that Kessel Run model. And I really think that's how we're going to do things going forward and getting the tech work. I mean, it's not traditional. I get after Air Force Personnel Center because they're kind of traditional down there. It's very mechanized. And I just, and so if I've struggled in one area in this A1 job, it's in the field. I tell the higher headquarters and I tell the personnel center, you're not down here working day to day. It's not the textbook workforce that the Air Force needs. And I think that is changing. And my job is to help them understand that. Because again, a lot of them, and I like to poke fun of their staff because I was there, but a lot of them come out of their offices and they've got 20 people in the office. What do we have at AFMC? Almost 80,000 civilians. It's not textbook, and it will not be textbook. So that's where I bring in this aspect as we look at what the great power competition will do in these areas where, Department of Defense and the Air Force will focus. Again, we're going to need talent like we've never had or known how to get before. We'll always have the traditional, program management, contract, and finance. But we're going to be doing amazingly savvy architect types that in some cases, I don't even know where you get this talent. So I think in a lot of ways, you will be a provider in some ways of that talent to help us get going. There could be even some new career fields. Heaven forbid if I have to, I have to tell the Air Force, you need some new career fields here. But there will be new career fields, I think, that emerge over time with these type of requirements that we need. Certainly we've seen in the artificial intelligence, the cyber, a lot of things there. But I know I've spent some time just brainstorming some of this, and Ms. Estep, who's the executive director at Air Force Materiel Command, we've said there's some new talent that we really don't know how to go out to the talent. So I think a lot of forums like this and being able to talk about that are so important. So just a couple things here, just from my team wanted me to brief, and I know Jeff wasn't able to be here today. I don't know where he was, but I hope he's not traveling or landing right now or something. But anyway, as Luke said, AFMC as a whole, almost 10 billion last year in small business. I don't know this fact, but I probably need to get it, Luke, and we'll work with Jeff. What did that number look like 5 years ago and 10 years ago? I'm sure it has grown tenfold probably. And again, pretty amazing. And I'm sure we're projecting to grow more this coming year. And then in our women-owned small business for the command, well over, I think it was about 1.3, 1.4 billion. That's amazing. That's wonderful. It's really wonderful for all of our small business communities. So I know recently you're teaming on a lot of things. And of course, this month is Women's History Month. We have a lot of forums. I think you're connected with Women in Defense. There's some seminars coming up and some panels and things like that. So I know I read all of that and I never know, is this internal, external, and I know you mentioned there was just something over at the convention center, was it this afternoon, or somebody mentioned that too? Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah. So a lot of opportunities going on. One of the things, I think you had a Collider back in January event where this was an acquisition one, over 1,500 acquisition professionals or those attended. So a lot of different ways, and Luke mentioned it. I mean, I'm just so proud of, I'll shout you and I'll praise you, Luke, because, you know, a lot of these different forums, he really got us to think out of the box, and these Collider events where we've had, what does this audit mean? And what does that mean to me as a small business? I think some of the ones you mentioned, whether you had them, you know, what is a demystifying source selection, and, you know, all kinds of relevant topics that I think previously we could never talk with you about. I mean, we never had a forum to do that, right?
Well, ma'am, even fire, remember your.
Fire, yeah, the financial or the fiscal, you know, responsibility that we have to do with the Department of Defense. And when you roll that into some of the small business requests, we're like, what is this, you know? So really, I think having this dialogue, again, has contributed to that large and growing small business spend. So I wanted to talk about a few of the initiatives that we're doing at the command level, but it really influences all that you're doing out there. When I look across my directorate, amazing people doing things, but probably one of the areas that's really grown is in this whole area of taking care of our people, taking care of our military, taking care of our civilians, our resiliency type programs, taking care of our military spouses, taking care of just so many family aspects. You know, that's what it's all about, because it's taking care of the workforce. And when you have the workforce you need, the mission gets done. So Jennifer Treat is my division chief there. It's where we have all the resiliency programs and a lot of very civilian focused programs, civilian wellness, employee assistance. I never had this stuff. I mean, I told Jennifer, I was like, I had this stuff when I first came into the business. And to me, that's one of the selling aspects of why coming to work for us, because we're gonna, when we have happy people that work for us and their families, and we can help them when times are good or times are not so good, that helps helps you keep the workforce that you need. And the whole aspect of hiring flexibilities, and a lot of people have heard of our acquisition demonstration program. That's the pay for performance, pay for contribution. Program's actually been around since 1999. But we at the command have been using it since 2016. And we just took part of our workforce there back in 2016. Now we're approaching where we're going to roll it out to almost all of the command. Won't be our wage grade or our touch labor workforce. It'll be the rest of our GS workforce will go to this acquisition demonstration. And the reason I like it, and then it's not always a crowd pleaser, believe me, because people, you know, those of you who are familiar with the GS system, you know, it's kind of like you're automatic or whatever. But if you look at corporate America, it's all about pay and for contribution and performance. And I believe to attract the talent that we need, we've got to have a similar system too. ACTDEMO is not perfect. There is no perfect performance system. But there's a lot of things that I like, the flexibilities, to be able to competitively hire with competitive salaries at the very beginning has helped us tremendously. Once again, 3,000 people at the center last year, 8,000 people across the command, new hires last year in 1 year. We could not have done it with this ACTDEMO. So we're really focused on taking our whole workforce there. We've got some things to work through over the next year and a half. But that's my goal, is to get the rest of our applicable workforce to acquisition administration. Because I think that makes us most competitive for the talent that we need. And a lot of other hiring flexibilities. As I said, I'm really trying to push headquarters Air Force to open up their aperture, because I don't need the status quo. Again, I think to get the talent that we need, we're just gonna have a lot of these hiring flexibilities. So, and just really focused on our, continuing our civilian workforce. As I open today, just what does a career look like today? And I'm out on the, talking with people almost on a weekly basis. Just did a young professionals thing earlier this week. And again, our folks are starving for a bit, and the supervisor can always, the supervisor is a great asset. People really want to know what the career look like. So maybe in these collider events, we need to have a little bit more of career, and that can be in your space, my space, everyone's space. Because again, if you're not talking with our up and coming workforce, our middle career workforce, if we're going to go after, and even people like me that are in the ending of their career, it's all about career, and I'll take it right to the very end. It's always about continuous development and things like that. And so I just think that's an area that I need to still focus on and continue to across all of the opportunities that we have to do that. So anyway, when I go back, when the Air Force had me at day one, and I felt like that every day. I've had an amazing career. I go back and do every day again, some more than others. It's been great, and just great mentors and great opportunities. And the model that I came up is different, but there's some things that are the same too. So anyway, great to be here today to open up for you. I'll take any questions that you have if we have time to do that in the schedule. And thanks for all that you're doing for the whole of communities, holding targeted events in the Air Force and our mission here at Air Force and Chip. Yeah, hey.
So I'm curious, when you started and you talked about your onboarding as you were given that 3-year plan, do you still do that?
They do. And a lot of our Palace Acquire programs, that's our trainee programs, where you come in as like a GS 5 or 7, and then each year, if you complete your training plan, and you go up to a journeyman level as well. So we still do a variant. Yeah.
So are you doing different levels of whatever career that they're going into, or are you doing, okay, you're in this section and I'm gonna take you over here to see what happened before it gets to you, and then I'm gonna give it to you at why you're doing what you're doing, and it's gonna happen over
I
here.
think
Sorry.
in theory, that's supposedly how it happens. I think, here's one of the stigmatisms of a new trainer. People are like, oh, I gotta have an experience first.
Yeah, right.
And, I get that. I absolutely get that. But I'm telling you, I take a trainee any day in some of their thinking.
They're sponges.
They're sponges.
Sure.
They ask amazing questions. I'm like, gosh, they ask good questions. Why did I think that? So there's a middle management or pros in the middle, that overused term, that life don't get me trained. I need a season, and I think this is our future. So I think we still do that, but there's some stigmatism. We've had to adjust our programs.
Can people learn what you want them to learn? I mean, like when you give them this 3 years, do they see what their objective is that they have to learn?
Oh, yeah,
And
there's
can
a
they,
whole formal training plan, and there's some adjustment.
so they can do it less than 3
Well,
years?
no, it's, from like a merit principle, you gotta spend a year, and then if you completed all the requirements, then you get promoted, like.
I see.
Starting as a 7,
Uh-huh.
GS 9,
I see. Okay.
And our engineering is geared a little bit differently. It goes up to the 13. You have to complete, you have to have, good performance, and then meet the training requirements.
Got it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right,
But
thank you.
again, it's very stovepipe. And one other thing I wanted to mention is, and I guess you could say this by me being in manpower, personnel and services, I think we value a diversity of experience more so than we used to. In the olden days, if I said, hey, I want to leave financial management and go to program management, well, you can do that, but you're never coming back. But now we're valuing, anybody ever had that? I mean, it was, yeah, you got my friend over there. Yeah, if you wanted to go do something else, you leave our career field, don't ever come back. Now we value it. Matter of fact, I just, one of my division chiefs, I just picked her up. She's coming off of a key career program rotation in logistics. She had the A1 background, went and did that for someone. I can't wait to get it. That diversity of experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And, yeah, very nice. Thank you.
So, okay, ma'am.
You mentioned a lot of the creative things that you're doing to attract that IT talent, especially in the Kessel Run area. But are you also doing some creative things to keep and retain that talent, especially in the IT and cybersecurity space?
Yeah.
And are you also, I mean, you know, the Air Force itself is introducing the warrant officers for the cybersecurity, right? And you know, I see a lot of civilians, you talked about diversity, they go all these different places. But really cybersecurity or IT experts, it's probably better that they stay in that career field for a longer period of time. So is there plans to enrich them so you get, you know, broader depth and of experience in those fields?
Yeah.
And also, what are you doing to attract more diversity of people, especially women, into that IT and cybersecurity?
So, yeah, copy hole on that. So let me talk a little bit about the, how we're gonna keep the talent. And this is one I've given a lot of thought to. There is not a perfect model because again, that type of talent is very, I think they get bored in a couple of years. They really, I mean, I've seen it. Most of those early people we hired for Kessel Run are probably long gone. They've gone back to the, well, I don't know, what's the new Silicon Valley, Austin or something like that, you know, they've gone back there. Or they've gone back to, I actually had a lady come from Wall Street. Oh, she was so, but they really didn't want to stay that long. I think, so you're not gonna keep those more seasoned people that they're probably not gonna stay unless they just really want to come to. But there is a newer generation that I think you have a chance of retaining some of them. But I don't, you know, I don't think they're ones to stay in that same area at that same time. So I think we have to think of ways to build upon that. Do we start rotating? I mean, I hate to use the word rotating, and that sounds government and bureaucratic almost, but giving them an opportunity, hey, where would you like to go next? And I'm hoping a lot of this mission that the Air Force is going to do with great power competition and a lot of these programs that you read about every day, you know, autonomous type vehicles and stuff, they're gonna, you know, feel compelled to go work on something like that. So maybe like do something like a Kessel Run, but now, and we have talked about this, then you put them truly in a weapon system program, more of a typical type weapon system program, where they can take those, particularly their data analysts and IT and software, to put it to like, oh my gosh, we've got to design this weapon system. So I think that will get us some. You're never gonna, they're not gonna sign up for the kind of career like I signed. I may be wrong, maybe it happens out there, but I think it will be different. But here's another thing. They may leave, but they may come back again. And that model is okay too. I really think. So let me talk about, you know, recruiting people. You look around, take any picture. We are doing better in that area. And I really, my whole thing is, you know, we focus on a lot of the diversity that we need, we want, and to succeed. And that's a lot of different types of diversity. So not just focused on women only, because I know that's a lot of what today, but there's a lot of whole diverse workforce that I want to bring on. But I do believe if you look at our true male, female stats, the command is really weak. I mean, we're, you know, particularly in a lot of, I don't know what it is, women like business careers, you know, if you look at this, if you look at in our like FM and contracting, so we don't. But you know, we've always, it's been a good area for us to recruit all kinds of diversity. We're still got more to do in the tech. And because we're all going after that same STEM type talent, as it was talked about, all the things that they're doing. And what's interesting is just very early, but I know, the top Air Force leadership really, I think you're gonna see a lot of focus on recruiting, not just military, but just a whole importance of, as Air Force as a whole, recruiting. And I don't mean the traditional, you get in the Air Force, reserve station line or whatever. And when I see these commercials, I mean, the Navy and the Marines, they all have wonderful commercials. Anybody seen that sub commercial out there? Why can't the Air Force? You go and I tell my husband, I'm like, man, I want to go work for the Navy. That commercial gets you. It does. Probably didn't cost him anything to make. I do get Air Force, we can do that. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do locally to get our whole diversity of talent. Maybe to go big sometime. I don't know, a B-2 flying over at the Rose Bowl. It's great. That just doesn't, I mean, it's great, the B-2 and everything. But that sub commercial is just,
If you need any help or advice on that, let me know. I was
Take
in.
your sub-nurse.
Oh. Yeah, I think in here, I have a question up here. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Lisa Tucson from Infinite Management Solutions. Okay, and I'm getting ready to date myself, so.
That's okay.
But
We're proud.
so I am retired from Wright. But back in the day, when I was in high school, you had a program called Stay in School. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And I'm just wondering, with the high school students, do you still allow the high school students to come into the Air Force to work during the summer or stay in school? Because in my junior year, I was able to work at Wright and go to school at the same
I
time.
think there are some programs like that. Kathy probably knows it better than I do, but there are, we are getting some summer hires because I've seen some of, but honestly, a lot of those summer hires are working in MWR, lifeguarding, commissary, things like that. So I think that's a great area, because again, why did I want to come work after I graduated? Because I spent 2 years, my first summer I worked in contracting's home office. I mean, I did whatever they told me, but I liked it. I heard this term source selection. I thought, this is, I'm a junior in college. I'm like, what is a source selection? How ironic. I remember this gentleman led source selection group or something. And then my second summer, I worked at the computer center where people punch cards back then. But again, seeds were planted, and maybe that's back to this Air Force recruiting. Seeds are planted or.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm Dr. Amy Magnus, former AFIT faculty, former Air Force Office of Scientific Research program manager. I've worked with DARPA a lot. So right now, what I'm working on slowly, is a children's museum. And so I've been looking at studies for why kids aren't going into the STEM fields. And I've also conducted research in human-computer teaming for AFRL on kind of natural barriers to human-computer teaming. And what I find is that young people from almost day one are being taught that to be good at math is to be fast at math. Interesting. And that the deliberative skills for math are completely squashed out, extinguished. The consequence of this at the Air Force graduate school is that we had people coming in with very limited skills and very narrow skills in mathematics. And we're kind of surprised by the work that a grad school requires, which is in fact deliberative skills. Is that mathematics is going through an incredible moment of growth. and expansion. And we need people with deliberative skills, and those, you know, are not necessarily valued when you look at curriculums like the core curriculum and other things that came out of that. So there's a problem in that parents don't feel connected with math curriculum because they look at it and they say, I can't help. Right? And what students continually get reinforced on is that if you go into math, you're going into it alone. And so one of the big messages that we're developing is that STEM is social. I mean, I grew up watching moon launches, and I've never seen a more crowded room than a NASA.
Yeah.
You know, so it's those kind of circumstances where we're seeing people use their skills in a team situation, doing really, you know, because the two things that empower our students most is arts and the math. They get agency from arts, and from math, they get the ability to just, to scale and to scale the massive. So there's such good stories that we can be telling in STEM and math in particular, and we're just not telling it, and we're losing people in kindergarten.
Now, that's an interesting, I did, you know, it really didn't have a lot of that perspective, and as you were talking, I found myself thinking, you know, because again, STEM, it's not like you bring a math book and you're gonna do problems all day. That's kind of, you know, or math problems in the board. For me, you know, kind of my own story, I mean, I did a lot early in my career. I was an Air Force, I was a cost estimator, you know, and there were a lot of math. It wasn't like I was necessarily writing math problems or math equations per se. But the application of that math to weapon systems and the business side of what we do. And I think that's what really got me. So I think it's translating math, ATH, to some, if I take your comments.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's a great point for us to think about.
Well, we've got so many things to get people excited about. We've got really good fly paper. And then, you know, just what we do is that we find different ways of queuing people up for the fun stuff, like, you know, augmented and virtual reality. They love that stuff. We often have to wait in line for it, and they're really resilient about waiting for line. And we're just making sure that we're using that time to like have them kind of wander around and say, okay, while I'm waiting, what else can I do? And when we've done these types of activities in schools and libraries and stuff like that, one, we're memorable. We go back months later and people say, I know you, I remember you. And we get feedback even 2 months later after we've gone into a school and saying, wow, the kids are still talking about when you can.
How early do you start?
I start from preschool.
Preschool.
I've
Oh,
got,
wonderful.
I do dice games where we have young children.
I don't want to be my.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was mindful, I probably have a clock here.
Well,
Yeah, we're getting.
I'd be happy to take people's cards.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for your perspective. So, yeah.
So I want to follow up on your Kessel Run model
Oh, yeah.
for hiring. So first of all, 2 questions. First of all, did they ever have to actually go and submit something through USA Jobs eventually?
Well,
and
they had
second-
to submit some paperwork,
Right.
you know, and they're still, okay, and I don't try to hide, it. It is a government organization, there are regs and things, you know, but we're trying to make that easy, so they did, yes, they did.
And then what really was the recruitment method that you used to reach out to that population? If you mind getting
So,
into specific.
so a lot of it was word of mouth. Word of mouth, because that Kessel Run community was connected in places I didn't even know existed, you know? And like, and there was, you know, again, they're not gonna recruit on USA Jobs, they're not gonna be at the college job fairs, waiting for their Kessel Run job. You might get a few people that way, but it was really fun. And there was one individual at Kessel Run, again, one individual who reached out in this networking of whatever, I'm sure LinkedIn, and they like, hey, I know so-and-so that worked on Wall Street. In some cases, there was a previous Air Force or military connection, or, you know, they used some of that. But they got us to go to a lot of, I'll just say websites or recruiting venues we never heard of. And they weren't even in the AFPC, Air Force Personnel Center directory. And it was like, women who code some website or something like that. I was like, just, I mean, that was just one representative. There were all kinds of names like that. So I think it was through word of mouth, through at the time, which were more obscure places for us. And, kind of the friends network too. Once a buddy comes over, maybe because they got laid off from high tech or something, we saw a lot of that. As soon as Joe comes, Jim follows and Sally follows. So it's kind of an individual word of mouth too, so. And we learned a lot more. I mean, we can do a lot better in that role, but the program team in the Castle One and Platform One in those places, we had to trust them to help us guide them. Because again, we fought the institution of that saying, you gotta use USA Jobs or we can't set up. Like, no, we gotta do it.
What is your turnover?
At Castle Rock, I don't know exactly, but it's high. I mean, our highest, we average about attrition for a lot of reasons, probably on the average 5 to 8%. I would suspect, and this is not a factual number, but we probably turned over a good 20-25% of the workforce at some periods. All
Over a year or over?
Over
a span of-
3 to 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's okay.
No, that's not bad.
Maybe, I mean, again, that's not a factual, but what we did is, up at Central Run, we set up these term positions. Again, the Air Force in term of we're gonna hire term people. They want to be with us 3 years and then they're done. I'm okay with that. The institution Air Force has to move.
Oh, term.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Has there been any talk or discussion with AFPC about kind of revamping the way they're rating experience, especially coming out of the industry versus you must have done this job at the lower level for 5 years or we won't qualify you?
Yeah, I mean, that's where there's in there.
Yeah.
We're never gonna get above and over and not using, merit principles, making sure people have the experience and the qualification. Because we're a qualification. But how we view that can still be a little bit different than somebody has 5 years of experience working, at an equivalent of a GS-12. And trust me, we've had to fight this. Because they're like, this person is not qualified for FM because they don't have 5 years as a GS-12 equivalent. But look, they were doing enterprise business systems in the financial area. I'm saying this because I have a real life example. It's not that somebody was a financial analyst for a company for 5 years, but they did enterprise business systems with some financial flavor. It is my toughest challenge with staffing and classification. It's an area, but yeah, I mean, we try to open up the aperture. And I think if the Air Force could do one thing, it would be to help. So I know I'll take one last question.
Hey, what do you have for talent management data system? And because I definitely hear a lot about time in service, but I'm curious about tracking actual skills, achievements, things like that, and
Yeah.
talent verification.
I'll just speak to kind of us, locally, LCMC or AFMC. There's a lot of homegrown systems out there, functional home offices have to create their own. But we're really working towards I'll just call it one big online HR system. And working with big Air Force, big Air Force, probably still, there's probably a need out there. So we have a lot of individuals that we're trying to merge in, but here's our problem. If you look where you gotta gather all this data from Air Force, from Department of Defense level, pulling all those different systems in, it's a mega innovation. And so to me, it has to start foundationally, like DCPDS, if you ever, that's the Defense Civilian Personnel System. That's about as ancient as it gets. It really does. I mean, it's a they're desperately trying to, I think, I forget the name, I want to say D-Charm, I probably got it wrong. But until they get that fixed, it's hard for me to revolutionize what we have here on a local basis. So we push and push and push. You have to do this big foundational, even the mill PDFs, you know, all the military systems. So there has to be on those sides, you know. One of the things I'm doing with Air Force is trying to bring some of my internal legacy systems, things that were set up for, you know, 25 years ago in these small groups, because that's all we had, trying to host them, because there's a lot of value capability systems bring. It's getting them hosted on some of these platforms that the Air Force uses, virtual HR and, you know, Salesforce and everything like that. So it's gonna have to go both ways, but we really need, you know, a revolution at the big overall systems. And that's no secret, those are tough funding decisions. It's foundational IT. So I probably stayed, but I knew you got other things to do.
Thank
So,
you.
hey, have a great session. I'll love it. I'll come back anytime. And I know I'll see a lot of you in a different avenues and venues, but thanks for following the G Hub.
Seeing that.
Okay, right, got a second. And this is going to be. I'm looking forward to that. So I've got my moderator up here, I'm gonna give a quick bio on him, and then we will be for the rest of the class. So this is Brian Stewart. And I have a personal anecdote at the end of this, but I'll give you his traditional bio here. Brian Stewart serves as workforce director at the Montgomery County Educational Service Center in Dayton, Ohio. In this role, he manages their business advisory council in coordination with major industry partners and 23 nearby school districts. Brian is a Leadership Ohio class of 2022 graduate and has received a Dayton Business Journal's 40 Under 40 award. Previously, he served as a legislative aide in the Dayton City Commission office. Brian holds a master's degree in public administration from the University of Dayton and a bachelor's in diplomacy and global politics from Miami University. Brian also serves as a board member for Welcome Dayton and is an avid Cincinnati Bengals fan. I requested Brian moderate this panel, not because he is super active in the defense, but because he is very energetic, very passionate about the theme region. And I couldn't think of a more engaging moderator for this panel discussion. So Brian, over to you.
Well, I'm really excited to talk with you all today. I'm a millennial that works often with Gen Z. So this might be a little bit of a record scratch switch of pace and tone from the first hour. But I am just so excited to welcome up our panelists. I'm going to ask Alex, Jocelyn, Cassie, and Elena to all come up at the same time. So you all can come up here and join me. You know, you all had such thoughtful questions, and I'm just going to be as candid as possible. There's a lot of really smart people in this room. Almost anybody in this room, we could probably invite up to be on this stage to provide your own lens, your own perspective on what we can do around workforce development. Thank you so much. And I just want to make sure that you all understand. Yes, this is a panel. Yes, we're going to be talking, but I want you to feel totally open to asking us questions. In fact, we can built in Slido questions so that we can get feedback from you in real time while we're doing this panel. So because I'm terrible at intros, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to go ahead and briefly introduce themselves So we can kick off today with some context about who we have in front of us. And I'm gonna ask, Alex from Jobs Ohio to start us off.
Hello, I'm Alex Conley. I run Jobs Ohio Find Your Ohio program, which is focused on national talent attraction. And we do have some defense clients, excited to be here today with that. Sure, so I'm Jocelyn Dean. I'm the Associate Talent Manager for the Dayton Development Coalition. If anyone is not familiar with the DDC, we are the Regional Economic Development Organization in partnership with Jobs Ohio, the State Economic Development Organization, with a mission to retain, grow, and attract new businesses into a 12-county space.
Awesome. Wayne.
Elena Oberg, I was in the Air Force for 26 years. I retired in 2019. I've done a variety of things from a small team all the way up to a very large organization level. And when I transitioned to industry, I joined a small company who quickly graduated to being a large company, but then got bought by an even larger company, KBR. And in my current role there, I'm the chief of staff for one of our business unit sectors. And looking forward to talking about sort of what I've learned about, it's nice when someone's been fresh to industry, sometimes you have some fresh impressions and you can sort of see how the business has been made. Because you're more, I think, aware when you've not been growing up in it and just sort of grew up in that. Thank you.
So I think it's a perfect segue before we introduce Cassie. So I've worked in the education and workforce development space for the last 5 years, working with 23 districts, 89,000 students. And one of the things that I've learned about our workforce development ecosystem is that we are spoiled rotten. We are like, as a region, as a state, we are absolutely spoiled rotten. Very few communities have a Sinclair, very few communities have Wright Patterson University, very few communities have a DC. Very few communities have the ecosystem and the assets, never mind the expertise and the individual champions that our region has. But I will be on this panel, the useful idiot. I'm like that in many scenarios, but today I will be the useful idiot. I don't know half the acronyms that have been bandied about the screen so far today, but I can tell you that one person that has done more hand-holding and more coaching to me as I've been in the workforce development space is Cassie, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. It really is fun working with Brian, if you haven't figured that out. And I know a lot of you will be great with sex. So I'm Carlo, and I, like Elena, spent 26 years in the best United States, or the best Air Force in the entire world. I loved every minute of it, and the Air Force taught me a lot of great lessons, and I literally spent my entire Air Force life in workforce development. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist by trade, and I was blessed to be able to lead multiple organizations while in the Air Force. And really, at the end of the day, much like our speaker just said, it's all about developing people. So in 2014, when I retired, was blessed to be able to stay here in Dayton and absolutely love it. To be able to step into an organization and continue to work in the workforce arena in that associate, which I'm excited to talk about a little bit more and what we do and what we're up to.
Now, I think we have a Slido question to kick us off. Are we able to get that QR code so folks can scan it and start giving us some feedback?
I gotta do a little trickarooski.
Okay. So while the trickarooski is taking place, I want to just say a quick thing before we get started. So raise your hand here if you are familiar with the software tool that schools are using across Ohio called U-Science, U-Science. So a lot of this room is familiar with it. So across Ohio, we have over 108,000 students that have been assessed with this interest and aptitude tool. So why this is useful is that in Dayton, we've had over 14,000 students surveyed through U-Science, and I want to give you a couple more numbers while we're getting this QR code ready. There are over 800 students in the Miami Valley that have a natural aptitude in cybersecurity. Over 800 young men and women who have a natural aptitude. Can anyone guess where we rank as a state in producing computer science graduates at the national level? Can anyone guess a number out of 50? So fourth, I heard 30th, 20, we're 41st-ish in the country at producing computer science graduates. Yet, the students that we are teaching computer science, the #1 student in cybersecurity in the nation hails from Vandalia Butler and goes to Miami Valley CTC. The #5 student in cybersecurity in the country, according to Business Professionals of America, hails from also weirdly enough Vandalia. There's something in the water. I don't know. But we have some of the best students at C# at Java, a whole host of things. Even nationally recognized computer science teacher, Melissa Goodall, who's won NASA awards in education. So I just say this because there is so much local talent, and I'm really excited to talk about, the defense industry, but I just want to say, like, the bedrock of education here locally, we have enormous opportunity. So we now have our Slido QR code.
Yeah, you guys might have to move just for a second.
So if everybody can humor us, there's a lot of expertise in this room. And what you feed us through the Slido will help guide today's panel. So yes, we have questions. Yes,
They're not hard.
yeah. But
I don't have a problem.
But we're also hoping that this is not just syndicated. You also know that you all raise your hands and offer perspectives, questions as we go about through today. So our first question is, how do we keep talent here? How can we keep talent in the Southwest Rock? How can we keep talent to support our military base? How do we? Ooh,
Is that one?
No, go back.
there we go.
There we go.
Ah.
Okay.
So, and while we do that, I'm actually gonna pick on Cassie while these first answers are coming in, because we have so many talented students. But Cassie, I feel like you're in a unique role, given your experience and your career. What are some of the skill sets and qualifications most sought by our defense industry?
Yeah, so there's a wide variety, but the biggest ones for sure. Are engineering, any type of engineering, science, for scientists. Program managers are another big one, that are in high demand. Obviously, anything in IT and in cybersecurity is also in big demand. And then I would add in the additional, like, supply chain manager, business majors. In position, so that you're looking for contracting officers who don't the business majors. And same with finance business majors. So those are the big ones, that are in very much high demand. I think the line of people that Ms. Waters talked about that was lined up, I know she's talking about Roberts, but we had that same line at Wright Air Force Base a few years ago with 3,000 people in it. And the majority of those positions were engineering and program managers. So those are the bigs.
And then Elena, I'm really curious, what innovative strategies and initiatives has your company implemented to attract and retain talent? This is something that we always talk about, how it's something not just to identify, but then attracting and then retaining.
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about the war on talent, Ms. Warren talked about, it's absolutely true. I want to sort of start with a broad perspective and then bring it a little bit more focused. So I think that, especially because we have a lot of people from small business here, and they're thinking, I think, trying to strategize, how do I do money? And one of the #1 things is, first, you have to be deliberate. You can't, this is not a pickup game. It's absolutely something where you have to be deliberate, you have to be forward looking, you have to understand the realities of your moment, but you also have to be very forward looking. And if you do that, then you will start being able to develop, okay, what's going to be your strategy to actually get the talent that you need, and then how you're going to hold on to that. In a company like KBR, we have the luxury of having some very dedicated, we have a chief people person in Jenny Miles, who's just an absolutely fabulous human being, who's, guiding our, human capital development programs that also are recruiting and retention programs as well. But she is not the owner of it. I mean, she's the holder of it, but it's an entire, it's a full workforce endeavor. And so just like Ms. Warren talked about with the Kessel Run, it is a lot of this word of mouth, right? You have to have, first of all, you have to have the kind of projects that are going to be interesting to your workforce. You have to have the kind of word of mouth that you are a good place to work. And so these are some of those underpinning things, that if you don't have that, then you might be able to, someone might think about you, but you're gonna, your reputation is gonna be very much out there. So you have to be intentional and understand what your reputation looks like and what you were actually presenting out there to that bigger community. And then once you have that, I would call that's the foundation, right? Those are the sort of foundational elements. And then now you have to start looking at who are you really trying to recruit and attract. We talk in our work, in our business, we have unicorns, and the unicorns are highly, they've got 2 PhDs in a very specific niche area. They've had a very specific set of experiences. The way that you're going to go out and attract that person is going to be a little bit different than how you might go if you're trying to go out and attract those software developers that are coming from, they recently might have been laid off from another organization, or they're graduating from college. We have found it to be extremely beneficial to look at college pipelines and not just looking at the traditional hiring sources. I think that when you are competing for the same people, well, that's a lot of competition for the same people. So go start looking more creatively to see what are those universities out there that might have some untapped potential, that where you might still have a population be very interested in coming to the Dayton region. And we've been very successful at partnering with specific universities and engaging with them and bringing them in. And then, so that's sort of on the attraction side. And then on the retention side, once you get into being deliberate, that you have employees who they're looking for development, engagement, but tailored to them and their unique experience. And I think a great model to use is how would you want to be treated? And what we often see is we have to be very careful not to put our managers and supervisors as a single point of failure, because often managers and supervisors will come from a framework of their own personal preferences and interests, and that's how they're going to think of their employees. And really their employees can often be extremely different for them, which is great. And the best supervisors are really agile at understanding that dynamic and meeting that employee where they are. But we have to make sure that we're, as a company, we make sure that we have what we arm our supervisors with, but also making sure that the individual employees understand the resources that are available to them, and that they can, help if their supervisor is not a perfect match to them, that they have other avenues to be supported to get the approach they need. So we have a lot of resources available for our employees, but we're still not perfect at it. We are absolutely constantly reevaluating. In fact, we have an initiative going on right now about how we can better arm both of our employees and our supervisors with the resources we have available. We've actually done some assessments of the resources we have pretty good. It's how employees are in a really information dense environment. We talk about information overload for our operators out there in the Air Force. It absolutely happens with employees too in a digital environment. Oh, it's on the website. Well, and some of them they're great at finding it, but sometimes it can actually be too much. And so we were doing some initiatives to help guide them better to find the things that are applicable to them. But happy to continue the conversation. I think that if you're a small company and you're growing into this space, be deliberate first, because you have to plan your human capital management just like you would be planning your business development management or other aspects of your work.
I think that's an important part that sometimes folks miss. Alex, first of all, thanks for coming down. What initiatives or programs are in place to focus on talent attraction for new workers for careers in defense related jobs?
Yeah, well, I can talk about the Find Your Hire program. That is a great tool out there for employers looking to hire talent in the defense industry and, a number of industries. So, when it comes to talent attraction, our biggest focuses currently are engineering, tech, and program managers. We're also in healthcare and additional fields. But what we do, and we're focused on national talent attraction, we're driving them to our site, and we're helping match them with openings at Ohio organizations. And so, and I think what every business should really think about is what is this audience care about? What are your key value propositions, and where can we win? And so for us, we are marketing in areas of the country where we have an excess of those in-demand roles and a higher cost of living. I think especially during the pandemic, one of the things we saw is workers really changed around what they value, right? Of course, pay is always there, but wanting to be close to family or having a better quality of life, more flexibility, wanting to work for something that gives them purpose or a mission. We saw a change there, a shift there. So we've been able to attract a lot of talent from the Silicon Valleys and these other larger coastal cities. So a lot of our marketing is, we do a lot of digital marketing. It's a great way to make sure that every dollar you're spending is, targeting the right audience. So we do programmatic display and video ads, we do LinkedIn, we do organic social posts, but then also for the military audience, obviously security clearances, everybody wants to security clearance. We've had a lot of success attracting individuals through the military installation hiring events. We have those transitioning military members getting out in 6 months, 12 months. So, getting them information about what Ohio has to offer, what your company has to offer, the opportunities that exist, as well as veterans. We also do work with GI jobs and military spouse. So, going to those events, looking at those outlets and then attracting that talent. And we've had a lot of success there. It's really great people in Ohio.
I have a quick follow-up because I was perusing your LinkedIn updates and you guys just went to South by Southwest? to talk about
Yes,
this?
I was just talking about boomerang attraction at South by Southwest.
It's one of my favorite topics because I went to Oakwood here locally, went to Miami for undergrad, UD for grad school, and I cannot tell you how many people that would be dead in my face and said, I'm never coming back to Dayton, and they're all moving back to Dayton for a multitude of reasons, but I think you probably are better at highlighting them than maybe me.
Well, I think again, seeing that, first, it's, you don't have to sell them as much in Ohio, like, they've been here, they have family here, they know all of the great benefits. I think a lot of times it's, sharing that, yes, the opportunity is here, yes, the job is here, you can still have this great lifestyle, and you don't have to sacrifice your career. I mean, Ohio, you're doing innovative things, we're doing incredible things, and so reminding them or, sharing that information, I think, but I certainly think the pandemic helped change that a lot too, where we saw a lot of the migration away from those larger cities. And there's something about a boomerang when they come back where they are invested, like they've taken all these diverse experiences, they're like, I want to make my hometown amazing and bring all of this, expertise, and they're hungry to do that. And so I love the conversations around boomerangs. I think that it's a great strategy to attract back. That's, workers when we can.
Absolutely.
Now, Brian, I don't think I ever told you this story, but I have a perfect example of a Boomerang very, very close to me. Who, when we received our orders to come to Ohio in 2012. I brought them home and showed them to my Northmont grad husband who joined the Air Force over 30 years ago and said, there's nothing in Dayton for me, I'm leaving. So I showed him the orders and he said, wait a minute, you're taking me back to my hometown. And I said, yeah, I am. Of course, it was Air Force, wasn't necessarily me, but after being here for about a year, he looked around and he said, this is a totally different place. This is just a totally different place than it was when I left. And that was part of the reason, for us to stay here. So great boomerang story right there in my own house.
And I really do believe we're seeing it happen in real time with millennials. And I think it's just going to be a continued trend as someone who's working closely in the K-12 space. There's such an effort right now to get young people to go into early childhood education. But there's challenges there, and as long as there's challenges there, we're gonna see expensive childcare options, which is going to highlight the bringing back as an option. Jocelyn, in what ways is the state investing in upskilling programs? Talk about some of the programs or resources that you think are innovative here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer this in a couple different buckets, right? So there are some programs that are not necessarily specific to aerospace and defense, but are certainly relevant and beneficial to aerospace and defense. Top of mind being the Tech Cred program out of the Lieutenant Governor's office, now housed in Workforce Transformation or Development. Don't put me on either of those. Is anyone not familiar with Tech Cred in this room? Okay, so very, very quick, Tech Cred is a reimbursement program. Technology is applied loosely, so it doesn't mean you are, training folks in your office to be software developers necessarily. If your business has been changed or impacted by technology, odds are there's a training and upskilling program approved in the tech cred program that you could send your employees to. It is up to $2,000 per credential, not per person, up to $30,000 per cycle. There are 6 cycles per year, so if my math is correct, that's up to $180,000 that a company can be reimbursed for upskilling and reskilling their employees. So it is an incredible program. I've worked with companies who are using it over and over and over again. It is designed to be reactive to industry, so there are ways for folks to say, this is a program that I need to be able to retrain my team on. Can this get approved with this training provider? It is also meant to be a much more nimble application system than maybe folks have encountered in other spaces. So I think that is an excellent example of programs that are being put out there to try to react to the reality of upskilling and reskilling. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the bread and butter of on-the-job training and incumbent worker training, which are housed out of your county OMJ center. They are not necessarily new, so they aren't as flashy, but they still deserve attention because they are always there.
Pretty flash, we got a new building and everything.
So it's a good, consistent way to get employees and get your team members reskilled, upskilled. Specifically on the aerospace and defense side, I want to call out the aerospace and defense competency model. That's a program that's being completed by the Office of Workforce Transformation in partnership with Ohio Manufacturing Association, Ohio TechNet, and industry partners. And what they are essentially doing is creating Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are the skills needed for anyone coming into any career ever? So think of dependability, accountability, communication, problem solving. Next bucket, or next level up is what are those skills and competencies needed that are relevant to our industry? And then maybe at the very tippy top of the pyramid is what are those company specific skills? The goal being, I forgot to mention a partner, Ohio Association of Community Colleges, that on the education side, if there's an understanding of those competencies and those skills needed, along with the job positions and descriptions that align to those, they can now build curriculum to that. So it gets both sides talking to one another and on the same page, so that as students are coming into those programs, there's a very clear understanding on the education side of how to help pathway them. And on the industry side, there's a very clear understanding of what you're going to get when you recruit students out of that program. And then last but certainly not least, mentioning the fact that, Jobs Ohio created as its 10th sector, industry sector, the military and federal space. So recognizing that this is a space and an industry that deserves our specific attention, a specific team, specific resources, so that we can protect what is already here in the state and certainly what is already here in our backyard, and continue to grow what is here in our backyard and what is here across the state.
So I'm genuinely curious because I go to national conferences, I meet with national partners, and one thing that I feel very confident to brag about Dayton is we punch out of our weight class when it comes to education policy and workforce development in the K-12 space. Many states' leaders are envious of the education policies that we have across the state, and it sets the stage for us in the K-12 space. I am genuinely curious from our panel's perspective, is Dayton a hub for workforce development innovation also in the defense space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally believe we are. If you look at the programming that Ms. Water talked about and the ones that she referred to. So someone asked about, what do we have for students in the region to be able to dip their toe in the water, so to say, around the defense sector. And there's actually multiple programs, and I'll just highlight some of the big ones. So the legacy program is a fairly new program within the last few years, but it actually goes down to middle school and it's programming for middle schoolers, and then middle schoolers can move into high school internship programs and then college internship programs, and also scholarships for those students. So a lot of great opportunity through the legacy program. I would also mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't, the social media program. So we've been working with the Department of Defense really since the late 80s on an internship program, and have put thousands of students through the Air Force Research Lab and also through the Air Force Institute of Technology in internship programs to get them that experience. I'll say something in addition that's very, very unique is our Defense Associated Graduate Student Innovators Program. It's kind of a mouthful, DAGSI for short. Also been around for a very long time, since the early 90s. And this is an extremely innovative program that I don't think there's any other state in the country that does this. So back in the 90s, when AFIT was under the gun again for potentially being closed or moved, the state of Ohio said, no, we're not going to let that happen. AFIT is really important to us, and the way that we're going to make sure this doesn't happen is we're going to actually budget for, in the no kidding governor's budget, paying for master's level students and PhD level students across the state, working in Air Force related topics. And once again, since then, thousands of students have been through the program, have earned their degrees, master's or PhDs in this program. And to add the cherry on the top, several years ago, about 10 years ago, the Air Force said, state of Ohio, that's fantastic that you do that. We love that program so much that we're going to add more money to that so we can sponsor even more students. So approximately, the numbers that we've gathered over the years, approximately 70% of those students are actually staying here in Ohio, which is, if you compare to national level initiatives, that's a really high number. Where are they going? They're working at the lab, because after they've finished their master's or PhD, of course, they want to stay because they really like the work and they think it's really cool. So they're staying in the lab or at AFIT. They are going to work for federal contractors, like Elena talked about, or they're staying in our colleges and universities across the state. So win, 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 win in that program. And so we have some very innovative programming here in Ohio that I think is above and beyond what exists in other states, and that has really helped us. Are we perfect at retaining our students? I'll tell you right now, we're not. But we definitely have a leg up compared to other states on our percentage of students who stay with us, and we are definitely focused on those numbers and trying to improve those numbers, those retention numbers of our students. That is both at the high school level and at the college.
Yeah, I'd like to pile on, because I agree 100% with everything Cassie's talked about. I will say, our company right here, just down the road, I mean, we are doing research, we are doing development work that is absolutely never been done before work anywhere in the world. And we're doing it right here in our backyard, but we can't really talk about it. That's one of the great challenges, right? Is a bunch of the stuff that you're truly doing that's never been done before. You can't share it. You certainly can't go. You might have, hey, we're doing great stuff on LinkedIn, but you can't go and talk about the details. And that's a great challenge, right? Is how do you connect and inspire our workforce to come and be connected to this work where there's a great demand for talent, and it's interesting work, and it's but you can't really let them know until they're fully walking the work. So we do have internship programs. I would encourage any company out there who is doing this kind of work that even if you can have even one intern that's a very powerful program for your company, and it's so beneficial to the employee as well. Granted, you know, AFRL's obviously doing that, many companies are, but if you're not doing that in your company, if you can wedge that out. We also, just an example of something really exciting, and my son got to take advantage of a high school internship program where just it was an AFRL PhD researcher, and he just decided on his own to do something in our local community, because he felt like there wasn't something for that high school age student in our community. And it was just an amazing experience, and that was a way for that kid to just see and do something that they would not have done before. And that's what I think it really takes, is that how do you take a workforce where they're seeing things out there publicly, like, you know, their end goal is to be an influencer, right? Well, because that's what they're seeing and that's what they're being exposed to. They're not seeing they're seeing potentially some of the work that's happening maybe on a national level, but how do we share with them some of the things that are happening right here in their backyard? But the part of the challenge is so often you can't get into those details. Once you get them in the door, you get them cleared. Wow, you've got them for the rest of your life. And you're just hoping to really use that network to continue to inspire.
And there's programs for matching funds, right?
What's
Or
that?
for internships, there's programs.
Yes.
Yeah, there are, depending on what kind of internship you have, absolutely.
So it's funny because on Monday, you brought about 40 local high school counselors to visit Infinity Labs, the arcade. And they got to talk to several of their employees about their educational journey, what types of projects do they work on, how are they leveraging their STEM career, what would they wish they could tell their counselor in high school to reframe how they approach their journey. And it was funny because oftentimes they run into this challenge, like, I really can't tell you exactly this thing we're doing, but I'll try to give an analogous example. And Alex, I'm gonna pick on you because I know you've got a journalism and marketing kind of frame of focus, if you will. When you're talking about this stuff at the state level, or even in a regional kind of way, I feel like workforce development is really hard because it suffers from this challenge of audience. There's parents, there's students, there's people trying to upskill, there's people completely pivoting. How do you, through your own professional lens, how do you approach that challenge of audience? We're talking about workforce development.
Yeah, so I'm gonna use a buzzword that I think everyone's heard a lot, personas. I think personas are wonderful. I think everyone's very scared of them. They think they have to be really like intense, but they don't. You know, it can just be a persona is essentially, you know, for each audience segment. And I would look at, so if we take tech sector, for example, I mean, you look at recent grad versus mid-level versus senior, and they're all gonna have different things that they care about. They're all gonna have different things that they want out of their career. So I think it's really about taking the time to understand, you know, what do they care about? What are they looking for? Like, what do we have to offer them? And really spend time on that messaging, because if you can't get a message that resonates, I mean, there's so many ads out there, right? They're just gonna like, okay, you're part of the noise. So understanding what really is gonna make them excited, and, you know, as much as you can talk about the mission too. I mean, I know that there was this, we had a software developer that we attracted from Silicon Valley who's now working in the defense sector here. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, it's gonna be so hard to get this person from Silicon Valley to like get invested in Ohio, who didn't have ties to Ohio. But it was, you know, talking about the lifestyle that he could have here, the exciting at a high level projects he could work on, the difference that he could make, and the community that he could have. And I think oftentimes we neglect selling the community, which I think is really huge, because you're asking someone, if we're talking out of state, about changing their life, like making a new home somewhere, relocating their families. So, you know, it's not just about selling this company, selling this job. It's about, okay, how do I bring them along this journey and have them envision themselves here? And so I think, you know, community marketing, regional marketing is huge, so they can actually see a life for themselves, and, you know, really just bringing them along that journey. It's hooking them, and then having it, you know, kind of bringing them down the funnel and having it really start to look real, where they're really excited about what their life could be.
Yeah, the number one selling point that, so having lived in 3 major metropolitan areas and then done a lot of work in others, we have no traffic. We have no idea. People, seriously, a lot of your potential workforce out there nationally, ask them what their commute time is. Ask them what they deal with in their commute, and then share with them here how it's completely different. I will tell you that that is an absolutely major recruiting advantage, that we do not take enough advantage of, so it's, yeah.
I know
It's
I know Jocelyn, she's like chumming.
I just want to pile on and echo the marketing. I know that we are a very humble region that doesn't necessarily like to brag about, you know, Dayton. And when I say Dayton, I mean like a 60-minute drive time from around the Dayton Center. We aren't necessarily, you know, tooting our own horn, but man, in my personal opinion, the idea that someone gets to Dayton and goes, yeah, this is nice. That ain't it. Like we have to get better about explaining why it is great to be part of this community and live and work and play in this community. And I know that that is tough for us as Midwesterners that are, you know, off chucks and very humble. I get it. I totally get it. But we gotta get uncomfortable.
So we actually, so Kat had to deal with, you know, at Wright Patterson, we would welcome new employees to the base as part of their base orientation. And I remember standing up every single time saying, you are going to love it here. People love it here. And the reason why is because you like small town, you like big city, you like big NFL, you like small town, like you want to be hiking, I said, you are gonna have all of that here with no traffic. And that is actually, they are gonna, and they do, and that's, when you talk to people who come from other places, it's because they can find the lifestyle that they invite in the area, whatever that is, whatever it is, they can find it here, and with the no traffic part added on. And I can tell you, we've been in DC or Los Angeles or Denver, or San Antonio or Houston, and go pick your market. Let me tell you, that is not their experience, and it really leverage, people.
So
And really what that translates to is more time to do what you want to do, right?
Nice.
So I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, but more family time, more exercise time, more hobby time, more whatever.
Well, and I think just as the resident millennial screaming about millennial stuff, I feel like so many people lack identity. They lack a story. They all have their own journey, but like our community is steeped in history, steeped in innovation. And not many communities in this country can beat their chest and say birthplace of funk that has the effects in modern hip hop. We're the original Silicon Valley, like we invented cheese. It's like all these silly things. But they are uniquely funny and quirky, and then you roll on, you know, the other intangibles like lack of traffic, affordable housing, being able to rise the ranks as a younger person far more effectively than in Chicago or New York. And I think it really puts some really, I would say, easy conversation to have with someone you're trying.
Brian, Rachel has a question.
Yes.
I want to feed you one. We've got some like money and it kind of ties to our next month's luncheon. One of them says across the board, we have more open positions and qualified workers. Do we see adoption of AI as a solution? And what type of displacement would this cause?
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump into that one, so I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm sorry. I said that.
You can start thinking about it.
Sorry. So yeah, does AI have a role in our lives in the future, and right now it does. And I think every company needs to figure that out. And but what I'll say is there are people out there that we are not, that we are leaving behind. And we need to pay attention to them. So I'll just give you some general categories. So starting with there's a bunch of them. So New Americans is a perfect example of a population of people that were not appropriately addressing and bringing into the workforce. Re-entrant citizens is another one of people who are desperate to get back into society and work, and we're not doing enough for them. People with disabilities have over a 7% unemployment rate, and we need to fix that. There's no reason for that, and it's just because there's so many barriers, but on both sides. There's barriers for employers to get to them, and then there's barriers for the potential employee to get to the job. So I'll also add in older adults. Many older adults in our community who have retired and are now saying, you know what, I want to go back and work hard. And they're like half of the time getting back into the workforce. So that's a whole other population. I'll even throw veterans into that population, because veterans oftentimes have difficulties transitioning, and that's why many of us are spending so much time on, attracting SkillBridge employees and veterans. And if you don't know about SkillBridge, that's another topic. But I would argue that we have people out there that are not engaged, and by no fault of their own. And it's our job to try to figure out how to engage them. And all of them want to be engaged and want to be in the workforce.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give a few sort of industry examples. So first of all, if you don't know about SkillBridge, you absolutely should. If you're an employer, it's free employees for 6 months, and it's fantastic. It's a very great program. We at my company, for example, we learned during the pandemic, we already were doing a lot of distributed work and leveraging. So sometimes, yes, we want employees to come to the Dayton area, but we also need to be able to tap into geographically dispersed employees. And so having the ability to do that, recognizing, teaching your managers how to manage geographically dispersed employees that are a lot better at it now than they were pre-pandemic, because there's some basic skills there. But if you can help educate your managers, your program managers to effectively do that, that's a great resource. We also are very effective at using our part-time programs. We recognize that if you can have basic part-time programs, you are going to reach out to a lot more. You have a lot more talent out there and they're fantastic employees. They're generally almost can't. The secret is you can't really tell the difference. They're so efficient and they're so good that what they do in their part-time can almost be what they would be doing as part-time employees. So I encourage, we've definitely been able to do that with KBR and offering workplace flexibility. We found that a lot of our neurodivergent workforce might actually really appreciate not having to come into an office and being able to do their work in a different way. And so being able to reach out to how do you, there's phenomenal potential employees out there that might have a variety of different seen or unseen disabilities or different ways different support that they need. And the more flexible you can be to those employees, the more dedicated they'll be to you as an employer, and the better that they'll actually be able to produce and perform on your work.
How are we doing on time?
Rapid fires.
Okay, cool. Can we fix the next slide up question real quick, just so we can start, keep getting, I think our next question.
Which question?
What are our top 2 occupational interests you're looking at in terms of hiring? We're very curious about the occupational interests in terms of hiring. And I've got some rapid fire questions for you, okay? So what's one major challenge you've encountered in workforce development in the defense sector?
Time frame. So we try to work towards helping people get into the defense sector. And Ms. Waters talked about it today. I mean, it's an old system, it's an antiquated system, and the Department of Defense is doing the best that they can in particular career fields to speed things up. And Castle Run is an exception. It's an exception. So that's something that's very frustrating for employees who are trying to get into the defense sector, because it could be up to 6 months from the point at which you get that initial offer to the point at which you start. And that's a long time to wait, especially if you don't have a job. Or if you're a new grad, right? You just graduated, because you got a whole bunch of offers coming in between that time. So, I mean, it's a frustration, and I'm hoping with these big changes that are coming that in the Air Force really needs to change.
I will actually add on to that, because I will take, I 100% agree with you on that timing. I will take timing even a step further and talk about, we have so many between the shortage and then the population at retirement age. There's such a great need, and there's a need in pipeline. So earlier than you have, by the time that person retires, it's
Too late.
It's too late. You're in a tough place. So I think the more that companies can start thinking about pipelining, especially I think a great population for this are the transitioning military members. So, we're going to these military base events. We're talking to some individuals that are getting out right now, but some are a year plus out. So starting to make those connections now, stay in contact with those individuals, start selling them on your opportunities. That's a great way to start building that pipeline and working with TAP offices. So Find Your Ohio is doing a lot of work with the TAP offices, educating them on the opportunities in Ohio, that we have, and we are still, we go to the bases and we leave information with that QR code card, so they can get to the website and apply. And so we are still getting, the TAP offices we've made great, but we are still getting candidates a year past the event. So, start thinking about those pipelines now, because, like you said, once jobs open, it's kind of too late.
Yeah, government agencies never throw anything out either, so that you'll still get those.
Okay, great.
So I'm gonna take this from my experience prior to the Dayton Development Coalition, which is while I was at Sinclair Community College, which you championed as a great resource. And there are still a lot of barriers for associate degree students to get into opportunities. And what I think is maybe not known at the work-based learning level, so internship opportunities, experiential opportunities while they're still a student. There's a lot of Sinclair students who they are UD students, they are UC students, they are Wright State students. But their resume, when they go to apply for an internship, is not going to say UD anticipated graduation 2026, it's going to say Sinclair student anticipated graduation 2024, and they get rejected automatically. So I think having that incredible pool of students and talent at our disposal, but still having that barrier is something that I saw pretty regularly while I was there.
I'll just say retiring workforce and really bringing up the next generation. They're absolutely fantastic, but just making sure you've got enough mentors and to go around to mentor, because there's still, especially when you're talking about very exquisite work, there is some knowledge base there that takes some time to develop, and making sure we're really transitioning that. So we're doing a lot of active programs to do that, but still it's a lot of work.
And sometimes you have to reach outside the organization. Okay.
You want a final word? You want to do some questions when we leave?
One of the things that I was thinking is, you gave so many resources of where people are included, where they are here, as far as you with the young millennials, et cetera, et cetera. What's so funny about that is, when you're in high school, we all want to leave home and we all want to take an adventure. But once we have a family, we think about, we need family to help with babysitters, we all that. So we all come back at some time. However, one of the biggest issues, we are business and talent development, and every time we're in a company, one of the biggest issues that we always say is not on your side. You see all the things that you're doing. It's really on the business side. Have you ever seen the hiring processes of some businesses? The way they hire, the interview questions, the onboarding, the training and development, it lacks. When you ask somebody, why did you leave? Well, first, they didn't get in the door because they never got a call back of what went right, what went wrong. Am I accepted? Am I not? What were you looking for? The job descriptions are so vague that it's this abstract thing of, I don't even know what you're asking me for. So it's like, we really need to take companies and say, businesses, get your act together. You've got to define this more. You've got to be this, because we put so much money in the state of all. I'm writing down everything you're going, and I'm going, yep, you're right.
So that's.
We're building a work-based learning thing to go and capture kids coming out of high schools to get into these places. But where we stop, or where the door shuts in the face, is right there at the door in the company with the interview questions.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and totally agree with the job description as well as the other ones, but I either see a super generic or a super specific where, you're finding that purple unicorn. That's, beyond what Elena talked about. So I really see our trade associations attacking that issue right now. So our Dayton Region Manufacturers Association and our Greater Dayton Area Hospital Association and our Town First and Dayton Area Logistics Association. I really see them getting after that right now and taking a look at it from across the trade association, which each one of those that I just mentioned has hundreds of members that are associated. So I think that's where that's really, where it's trying to be addressed. Is it perfect yet? No.
No,
But
that's what we do.
it's definitely highlighted, and I see that's where that's happening right
Yeah,
I'd like to also just add in that, you know, for example, my company, we're a learning company. We certainly don't get it right, but we work very hard to be assessed. We actually did an onboarding assessment of how well we were onboarding. We found a lot of lessons learned, so we try to make it better, right? I will also say more locally, if you have a great person out there that you're seeing them struggle. I mean, Women in Defense is come to a branch of Women in Defense lunch and say, I've got a great person here. And let's share who they are and talk about it, because it is all, the network still matters. And
It
that's
does.
hard, but it's teaching our young people how to network, and I will say, you know, bring them to Women in Defense, have them apply for their women.
Mentorship program.
We have a mentorship program, and that maybe helping them build their network, especially and outside of maybe their comfort zone. And that can be really hard for someone that, you know, sometimes if you have, you know, a disadvantaged potential future employee, we have to help them build their network. And that's good, because that's where those opportunities will ultimately manifest.
absolutely. I agree totally. That's what we do. And so this is one of the biggest issues where we see a problem. So I love everything that you're saying, but we need more of that from the business side. I mean, the businesses need to buck up too.
I'm sure anything you're seeing from the Slido as it scrolls through, any questions you want to throw us from the Slido. It's interesting, this whole thing's about UX, UI, and again, the Modern College of Design has an amazing UX, UI program. And we try to teach our educators what that even is, so they know to talk to students about.
Can I throw up one thing that Jackie Jennings Last is working on, is that she would like to, she's working with Intel and she's the executive director of
now.
Yep, you know, I'm kind of surprised to see her here. But she'd like to get into. Very good. Oh, she wants to get into every school in the state. And I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah.
I feel like,
We have career navigators specifically to do that, and we can pull the U-Sense data and show you which students have a natural aptitude in microchip production.
And we have to get Amber out of the back.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
You are signed up for the back. That's what that is later.
We're really good at, we're really good at growing our own and bringing business incubation into the schools. I know the Entrepreneur Center is interested in doing that, but I really feel like as part of this effort of getting into the schools and finding these students is get into the schools with these efforts.
Yeah.
And involve the students and they will power it themselves. I am positive.
So Tuesday of this week, we had 70 sophomore and seniors at Centerville who were all self-selecting into this day-long opportunity to meet with local STEM leaders. One gentleman had 2 PhDs, worked at Abbott, was talking about his career. I was watching these high schoolers learn from this gentleman, and it was inspiring. And it's the exact type of innovation that I hope we can continue
I
to
think we
see.
can do one more question that keeps kind of popping up, and it's basically around the investment. There's a lot of investment that goes to young people. What about the investment in like the mid-age worker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, from our company, we have an absolute portfolio. It is not at all early career or later career based. All employees have equal opportunities. One of the things that we do is we make sure that one thing that you often see in companies is that if you're not moving eventually into management, that you're not valued. No, we actually really trying to reinforce that technical depth is also very valued, and making sure that employees see development opportunities that allow them to stay technically focused. So there's a different set of things that they'll be focused on, but we make sure like our benefits are not restrained to just early career. Now that's once, we're talking. Now, I'd love to hear like what Ohio is doing, and that's from an industry perspective. Most companies are really trying, put investment across their workforce. I don't think they're training any that are very specific, just.
I know Jobs Ohio, we work with companies and, there's a lot of upskilling and reskilling, opportunities with them. So Jocelyn and Cassie can talk about, I think too, companies need to be thinking about, continued education for their employees. And if there's an area that you feel like weakened, let's say, like giving them the opportunity to really explore an area that interests them, to, so they feel like they are on top of, their game and on top of the trends. And I think pushing employees to really look into their individual space. There's so many conferences, there's so many certifications, there's so much out there right now that you can find to kind of refine and hone your skills. And, I'll speak for myself. I initially started at a traditional marketing agency, right? We were doing more of the PR and content, and we weren't focusing so much on digital marketing. And so I, saw this need of, man, I really need to get in there and learn more about this digital marketing space to be effective. And luckily, Jobs Ohio has, this great continuing education and budgets set aside for each employee based on their interests. And got my digital marketing certification. That was great. But I think just encouraging employees to share like an open space, like what do you feel like you're weak in and where do you think you need to grow, whether that's technology or whatever that means, like, and we're supporting that with dollars on that. Any closing remarks?
Any closing remarks? Any final words?
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
We
you.
get a plus for-
About 50 people here today, but there were also about 30, 40 people online that were listening as well. So this was a good, well-received message and very timely and needed one. Yeah, so I'm glad I didn't know that was directed. First beer on all of you guys. And so, and that's an open invite, right?
Yeah.
For everybody.
Optional, you don't have to go for a
Keep the innovation and the conversations going to DPC. Thank you so much. Yeah.